everyone, and welcome to a new video interview for Jogonet Gaming News. Today we are joined by Steven Salz, co-founder and CEO at sports and esports betting and media company Rivalry. Hello, Steven. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Rivalry's shares have now begun trading on Canada's TSX Venture Exchange, a major step for the company. Why was this move made? And what made you choose this exchange in particular?
For sure. So one, we're founded in Toronto in Canada. So like myself and my co-founders are from here. So we just like understand the market. We know the investor landscape and just like the dynamics of the whole thing. So we felt comfortable listing here. We also like, proud kind of Canadian company, wanted to be part of the ecosystem here and always have been. And then also in the US, when we thought about a US listing, where many are listing now, it's just, we don't operate in the US currently. We might in the future, but we don't right now. And it just felt that at our size, listing in the US, no US operations, we just wouldn't get the kind of time of day from investors. And it just didn't feel like the right time there. So that's like simply why Canada versus the US for the listing. And then the reason why we went public is sports betting companies will often go public earlier in their life than a typical tech company. And unless you're private and you've got like Bet365 and others where been private forever, and they're just usually owned by like a large wealthy family or individual or something like that, right? We are like traditionally funded more like a startup, lots of investors, everything like that. So there's two big constraints when you're private as a sports betting business. One, anyone that owns more than 5% of the company has to be on the license, like the same as the founders. This is just like, most people do not want to subject themselves to this. So it's just very difficult. It can make raising a lot of money hard. And then the second one is new licenses and payment providers and kind of anything that requires like, a third party to get involved with your business in any meaningful way. There's a huge due diligence process always because you're in online sports betting. So just looking at, the company, the founders, shareholders, corporate structure, everything, that also just can take a while. So being public, you can get the speed unlock of not really having either of those. So when you're public, the ownership goes from 5% to 20%. The due diligence stuff, assuming you're listed on a reputable exchange, which Canada is, you also can like move so much faster through all those processes. So we went public only really like 3.5 years after launching Rivalry because like it gives us so much more speed. Now that we have like all this momentum, raised a bunch of money, it just like we're getting way more speed by being public now.
Right.
So yeah.
What are the company's expectations in its tradings operations for the short term and going forward, but also in terms of adding more capital to its operations, which I believe is one of the main reasons why you went public?
Yeah, I think right now with the money we raised going into the listing and even, some fairly, let's say like ambitious spending plans for the next year or so, we're good. I mean, the company's got about 40 million in cash. We have no debt. We generate revenue where it covers a lot of our, call it like fixed costs and day-to-day costs of operating the business. So a lot of the money is really just kind of going into growth and marketing, everything like that. So, pending any crazy kind of outside event happening, we're good for some time. I think like most companies that trade on the stock market, definitely if the stock starts to perform really well and more people get interested, investment banks will start showing up with different opportunities of, hey, stock's done great. There's so much demand, people want to get involved and invest. If that were to come our way and it was under the right terms, we would probably take more money just to continue to kind of build the balance sheet and build almost like a war chest of cash. But yeah, like right now it's really just kind of staying focused. We're public, life as a public company, and just continue to kind of focus on our operations, building out the business.
Right. Well, and this capital we were talking about, the move in general, is expected to allow Rivalry to pursue new market and vertical opportunities outside of its initial esports first offering. Could you share us further details or examples of new markets that Rivalry will be pursuing?
Yeah, so I guess two different, interpretation of markets. So one, like geographic. So we are in gray markets right now under Isle of Man license. We were recently granted an Australian license. So Australia will be our first country regulated market. We're expecting to launch there really soon. Canada had just legalized sports betting in August, and then they're going kind of like the US, where you have state by state in the US. In Canada, you have province by province. Ontario is the largest province in the country, and they have opened up a licensing process as of like mid-September, I think. We're anticipating participating in that. Obviously, we're hearing that the go live and everything for that will be early next year. So we'll be prepared to kind of do that as well. And especially being a Toronto, Ontario, kind of Canada-based company, obviously. So money will definitely help with that from like a pure geographic new market perspective. And then on the like markets itself, literally within the business, which people look at as different titles. So our esports business is really strong. And then we are adding way more depth to traditional sports. So adding more things like cricket and stuff like this, where right now we're very focused on like the main sports, soccer, basketball, boxing, like all this kind of stuff. So we're definitely adding way more depth with more resource now to our sports offering to make it kind of as good as any of the other sports books out there. And then continuing to invest behind original IP like Rushlane, our casino game that we built in-house, and more, let's say, like product innovation from Rivalry. We can now just invest it, I guess, in that R&D.
In terms of these new opportunities that are appearing, how does Rivalry expect to secure its presence within them? And what kind of partnerships could play a significant role there? Is Rivalry actively looking for new partnerships in these markets?
Yeah, the way that we launch in all markets, and I think it goes back to before we had raised all the money we did, we were very startup-y in terms of the money we had. So we had to rely completely on like our own efforts, like smaller influencers, like more community-based activations. We have 20 plus social media channels, our own YouTube channels. So Rivalry has in the last couple of years, like our monthly measured engagement on our social properties and content is more than any other competitor in esports betting. So we built like a very relevant brand. And then what that means is like every new market that we go into, and now that we've got more money as well to spend on partnerships, it means we can continue to kind of invest and expand our social media properties alongside bigger partnerships, bigger influencers like content creators on Twitch and YouTube and elsewhere, esports teams, sponsoring events, running our own events. So that's really how we'll do it. Like Australia and Ontario and even new gray markets will be the same, is launch local social media properties, build a presence in the kind of gaming community, esports community, work with some of the biggest influencers, help to fund and sponsor some of the biggest events, even create new events. Like we find a big part of the brand is like giving back. So we do sponsor and we will actually help create events that we don't offer any betting on. So like stuff that is, lower tier, that is helping up and coming aspiring pros kind of get more viewership, more interest in them. So like we've done this in a lot of our markets where, again, sponsoring, putting up prize money. We even paid for players to go to boot camps in Europe and setting them up there. There's no, there's no betting we offer on that. It's just like part of kind of reinvesting back into the communities. And that's kind of what we'll do everywhere.
One of these new opportunities we briefly talked about is Canada, and taking into account the company is Canada-based. How do you assess this opportunity that is so well known to you and the company? And what are your expectations for the market as it, well, as we just said, it is just now launching. What are your expectations for it in the long and short term?
I think Canada will be interesting because what the regulators here chose to do, which we think honestly was the right move because it's very like commercial, is Canada is a very big gray market and always has been. So we don't operate in Canada as a gray market operator because we're here, but many operators with our license do. Canada is super important, like Bet365 and many Betway, et cetera. And Ontario is the biggest province in Canada. So it's like the most important of the markets in Canada. So what the regulator here chose to do is, unlike some other gray markets that switch to regulated, where they get kind of, let's say, the local regulators to shut off anyone that doesn't have the license, they are going to allow people to continue operating here gray and not really go after them. I mean, it's going to be harder to operate over time, but they can continue to operate. So we think the competitive dynamics here are going to be a little odd. Like it's going to probably look a lot like it does right now. Like I don't think it's going to change. What we find with Rivalry is every market we go into, we don't often bump into our competitors that often. So while they're all kind of going toe-to-toe marketing, looking for the early to 30, mid-30 sports bettor and the typical channels, all of the markets we're in are very competitive. We don't often run into other sports books. Like we find that places we go and the channels we use are like very underutilized or not utilized at all. And it works really well for us. So we'll continue to do that in Canada. The good thing about being here is that we have such a good, obviously kind of on the ground cultural understanding that I think the flavor of our marketing and the types of influencers we use might be a little wider in scope. So we might go for like, city specific influencers that we know because we follow them on Instagram and we think they're hilarious and interact with them. And we
Right.
have like a really good understanding of like super targeted influencers. I'm not even necessarily gaming influencers, just like personalities that are relevant that we know would work for us. Like we're going to do a lot more of that in Canada and in Ontario in particular, just because we have such a good understanding here. Yeah.
I would like to ask you now about the Australia opportunity, which you mentioned. That is a market that you company perhaps isn't that invested in its culture as with Canada. What are your expectations for that market, and how will the company position there, which is a highly competitive market, let's say?
For sure. Yeah, it's probably one of the most competitive regulated markets out there, to our knowledge. It doesn't have many esports, let's say, focused operators or competitors. We do have on the ground teams. So what we do in all of our markets, like Canada will be different just because like the founders are here. Like I'm from here, I'm in Toronto right now in my place. So it's just, you know, there's a lot of history here, I guess you could say. Whereas still though, in our other markets, like the reason why we've been so successful is we're very good at getting localized pretty quickly still. So what we do is we hire like a country lead that is basically like the CEO of Rivalry for that market, almost like the franchise of Rivalry in that market. And that person is from there and lives there and is, you know, looks like us and sounds like us and is part of the community, everything like that. So we've done that in Australia. So we do have like a team built out there that is like us in Australia, understands the flavor of how we do things, part of the demographic, part of the community even. So it will be a really, really similar approach. But the thing that's unique about Australia, and Ontario will be like this as well, is it's our first regulated market. So we can do more like on the ground advertising legally. We'll have a mobile app eventually. We can do Facebook ads and Google ads. We currently can't do any of that right now in any of our markets. So we have actually way more like range of marketing there. So it's exciting for us, for sure.
And regarding the American market, which you mentioned that there were no immediate plans for launching there, but is it a long-term possibility?
For sure.
Again, perhaps it's a bit obvious of a question, but what would be the strategy in that particular case? Because now most operators are looking at the American market as a big opportunity for sports betting right now.
Definitely. So we see the US for sure as we're having a ton of active conversations. It's just that the way that the US has developed on a state-by-state basis, limited number of licenses or skins you get from a land-based operator, it's just not, you know, as fertile ground where we can't, you know, we can't go market state to state and apply through like a regulator like you can in Ontario. It's just different. So the way that we look at the US and the conversations we've been having are more with very large existing operators that have many licenses, and then they see our brand and our equity with a younger demographic and the ability to acquire them as something that could be very complementary to what they do. So it would be more like a brand relationship or like a co-branding opportunity where, you know, the esports component of their business would maybe be like brought to you by Rivalry, and we would kind of own it and run it and operate it. So I think that's more how we look at the US. It's just not immediate in that it's not going to happen in the next 6 months, but, you know, our goal is still the next, you know, 12 to 18 months to be able to demonstrate to the market that we have a strategy and opportunity to enter the US. Yeah.
Right. Well, now moving away from this market conversation, what I would like to ask you is about a statement that you said in a prior interview, in which you said that Rivalry is building the most comprehensive betting and entertainment experience for the next generation globally. What does this exactly entail, and what are the changes in terms of ambitions and needs of this newer generation of sports betting enthusiasts?
So the reason why we always say entertainment, and even Rushlane, our casino game we built, the first game in kind of that universe, which is a racing kind of Mario Kart type game in cyberpunk world, is built for entertainment. It is not like a slot machine. You don't sit there and kind of hit it again and again. It is built to keep people engaged. They have, you know, avatars. There's like kind of dances, emotes. There's live chat. Streamers and content creators play the game. We created like a game lore. There's like an underground bar they hang out in. There's a whole like world around it. So like the wrapper of entertainment goes on everything we do, from our social media, our content, the way we built the products, the system called Quest we have, which is again like an entertainment-based kind of role-playing game that sits on top of Rivalry. So we're always injecting that in because the next generation, which is really just under 30s of sports bettors, Gen Z, et cetera, they don't bet like their parents do. So, and the same as like they don't invest like their parents do, the way that they buy stocks and speculate on crypto and other things is just very different, right? So their use of these consumer products is different, where we find that you have to inject a lot more like clout and entertainment into the experience. So the reason why people bought GameStop stock, and it was a meme stock, was because one, of course they wanted to try to make money on it, but two, it was like a ticket into the meme. Like I bought it. Like I understand the financial markets pretty well, and I knew it was stupid, but I bought it because like I wanted to be part of like the meme. Like it was insane. Yeah. So like buying it bought you into the meme, and like you go on TikTok, you show your portfolio, and you're on Reddit, and it's just like it was fun. Like again, it was like an entertainment experience owning those stocks. Like, it was insane. And I think that that's how a lot of things are done now. Like the reason why trading cards and Pokemon cards got really popular again is not because all of a sudden there's like some newfound value for them. It's that Instagram Live and creating viral YouTube videos didn't exist 5 to 10 years ago the way it does now. So now you can spend $100,000 on a pack of Pokemon cards, and there's a whole like experience you can wrap around it, and a whole like influencer component to it as well. So betting is the same. Like we find that people on Rivalry are betting in higher frequency, smaller amounts. They're taking pictures of their bet slip, putting it on Twitter, sharing it with like their influencer and like the community like that they have with that influencer, like that kind of Twitch community. There's like that whole component to it now. So I think like we just like always play into that because it just creates like so much more engagement in the experience. So that's what we talk about when we say like a comprehensive betting and entertainment experience. It's, I think, really what Robinhood in the US has done very well is they built, and I know they're kind of getting shit for it sometimes, but I mean, they built a very like entertaining investing experience. And at the end of the day, like I know regulators sometimes don't like the way that Robinhood has framed things, but like I saw a great tweet from a VC a few years ago that has really resonated with me. And it basically said every consumer company for under 30s, or I think it was maybe Gen Z, is also a media company. And like we definitely take that to heart. I mean, it's just, you know, the style of marketing and the type of, again, like engagement that this demo is looking for in its products now is just so different than their parents' generation. So like it's not that we're trying to like, you know, create so much entertainment to like mask the fact that they're betting. Like we're overly transparent about it. We provide so much education on the site. We even make responsible betting like a component of part of our deals with esports teams to educate the market. It's more that like, if you're not bringing more to the table as a consumer experience for this demographic, then like, you're just not going to find success. So that's really what we mean by it.
Right. So you definitely see a correlation and a willingness to engage with the sports betting market from your esports betting audience.
Yep.
Right. So
yep.
What explains this interest in both offerings?
I'd say that people that come in to bet on esports are definitely still sports fans in many cases. So for example, South America as a geography is one that we are active in. You know, they're huge league fans for sure in certain places, huge Dota fans depending on the market, and huge CS fans also depending on the market. But you know, when football's on, or soccer, I guess for the North Americans with football, when football's on, like they also want to bet on it. I mean, it's like there's still a generational thing where the grandfather was a fan of X soccer football club, and then his son was, and then he's now the father to, you know, the Gen Z kid and is still also a fan of that soccer club. So, you know, there is a generational like historical component to all of that. And we do find that still takes place here. I'd say that the only difference is that esports now is just in some geographies more predominantly watched by an under 25 audience. So, you know, using it as a kind of a branding approach in a way that we get them excited is just been successful for us. And then we make sure we offer sports betting still because they still want to bet on, you know, the UFC sometimes, or boxing or soccer or whatever.
Right. Well, now going a bit about Rushlane, which you briefly mentioned, the game combines social interactions of massive multiplayer online games, this thing you said about emotes, dancings, and so on, with the mechanics of a casino game. Now, Rivalry is claiming it is a new genre of gaming. What does this exactly mean? And what potential do you see in that market and new products within that type of game?
Yeah, so a typical online casino experience, like a slot, is a very isolated experience. Like you are playing in isolation and you're just hitting a slot machine, like an Egyptian themed slot machine or a jungle themed slot machine or whatever it may be. Rushlane, and we did not introduce those kinds of slots, and I'm not sure if we will. Our audience is very social, very community based, and we wanted to produce a game that was consistent and like empathetic to that. So Rushlane, you cannot play Rushlane alone. It requires a certain number of players. You have to wait for other players to join, like in the lobby, before the game will actually start. There's a live chat component. Every user on Rivalry has like a gamer tag or like a username. So rather than betting on a virtual horse, because there's virtual horse racing you can bet on all day on these other sports books, you are the horse. So when you enter the game, like you see yourself populate into the game, your username. So there's almost this like more active feeling of participation. It's like marble races on Twitch where, you know, people play those all the time. You enter through Twitch chat and you see yourself in the game. It's like that, right? So there's that more active participation. And then we can add way more layers of kind of customization and engagement into it. So again, rather than just like a slot, which has like one singular experience, Rushlane is a game lore in a world, in a universe where we can constantly be like expanding it. So there's characters we've created, there's IP we've created. It was built to be streamed. So we created a thing called Rushlane After Hours. It's like these events we run on the weekend using the Unity game engine. We rendered like an underground bar. It's kind of Blade Runner, cyberpunky. The content creator sits in the bar and it's like super dynamic around them. And, you know, the people in the bar are like characters from the Rushlane game lore. So they're kind of waiting to play the game and their audience is joining Rivalry to play with the influencer. So it's like a communal experience. And we'll be able to keep like adding into that. So like more customization of avatars, make the waiting and loading area like a little more mobile. Maybe you can move around in it and just hang out. Maybe we'll add like music will be playing and people can just like chill on the site and like chill as their avatar while they're waiting to do other stuff. Like it opens up the door to kind of a gaming universe of this like style and flavor of games in a regulated environment where people can put up a little bit of money and have some fun, and takes away this very, what we think is a isolating experience. And if anyone's been following kind of Twitch and, you know, Twitch drama, which is kind of can be ridiculous sometimes, but you know, slots has been getting a lot of flack also. Like there is a stigma against slots in our view among a younger consumer. So like we want to kind of move away from those experiences and introduce just something like super novel to the market, which is what we've started to do with Rushlane.
Right. Now, as a closing question, and taking into account your experience within esports and the new sports betting market and so on, I would like to ask you, what do you see as the future trends gaining momentum both in esports and sports betting? Because we're now talking a lot more about crypto, about VR. Yes, what do you see as the new big thing in these markets? What should we pay attention to?
Yeah, so in esports, we've talked about it before. Like we think mobile esports currently, so people don't realize because it's just not in your face as much, but mobile games and competitive mobile gaming, like mobile esports in South America, Southeast Asia, like basically more developing markets other than core EU and North America, are in many cases bigger than PC and console esports by like a very significant margin. So there's just no great betting product on it right now for a lot of reasons, but that we expect is coming very soon, like early next year. And then I think that will massively open up the success of those titles because more betting means more viewership, more kind of awareness of it. And I think that you're going to find in the next couple of years, I think 1 or 2 mobile esports titles will crack the top 5 most bet on esports for sure. So like that is an expectation we have, and we're like extremely bullish on mobile esports. And then I'd say from a sports betting, just macro perspective, crypto is a little odd. Like I think that it will continue to be a deposit method in growing numbers. All these offshore crypto only sports books, I personally hope that there will be more regulatory crackdown on it, because I just think that the addition of crypto, so there's always been, you know, offshore sports books that try to skirt the law, but historically you'd have to use like, you know, a credit card or transfer money. And if you were younger, it was just harder to do that. Now, like we know for a fact, you know, these offshore crypto sports books with very suspect licenses or none at all, you know, it's a QR code and your crypto's in, and you can VPN and put in any information in the KYC form and you're in. And we know there are people under the age of 18 doing that. So like, it's just, you know, the sector still needs consumer protections. Like, so like I that's more like a macro point. Like I really just hope that stuff gets cracked down on as a thing. But yes, from a sports betting thematic, I think that people want to bet on more stuff. So the thing that some of the crypto sportsbooks do well, though, is, you know, they offer markets on like any kind of event. And I think that is becoming more popular. Like people want to bet on like really weird stuff now. so I think it's going to add more, you know, yeah, like people want to speculate on crazy stuff. Like, you know, like for example, I'm just making this up right now, but you know, what is Facebook's corporate rebrand going to be, or something like that. Like people want to put skin in the game on like really random things now. So I think that there's going to be more market types. It's just like, you know, what historically used to be just like betting on politics was like always the kind of odd market on sports books. I feel like that offering is going to expand a lot to just like lots of weird events people are going to be interested in speculating on is my bet. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us today, Steven. We look forward to reporting and hearing about new Rivalry's developments. So thanks a lot for this interview.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you.